everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lisa Brazelton. I'm here with Chris Noble. We are with Wisdom from the Edge, and we are all about how to master your mental well-being. So we look forward to having you join us.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wisdom from the Edge. This is our third episode, right? I think.
Number 3.
Number 3.
1 + 1 is 3.
The new reality that we live in. So I am your co-host, Chris Noble, joined with Lisa Brazelton here. And today we wanted to talk about intuition, the ego mind, and kind of discerning the difference between the two, but also really getting into intuition. What is intuition? How can we recognize our intuition? And of course, how can we listen to it? How can we integrate it into our everyday life? And that is easily more than enough to chew on for this episode. There's so much we can talk about. So we'll be breaking it down the best we can today. I'm sure this is a topic that we'll get into many, many more times. But I wanted to start today, Lisa, with just asking you a really simple question, which is, what is intuition for our watching and listening audience? Let's just start with the basics. Like, what, from your perspective, because everyone's going to have a different perspective, but what from your perspective is intuition for you?
Such a great question, Chris. Can I start with what intuition is not?
That's a great way to start. Thank you.
I would like to start, even though I'm not a big fan of doing that. Normally, in this case, I think to discern the difference of what we may think intuition is, I think it's one of the things that people most struggle with, is they don't know how to tap into it. So let me first describe what I think it's not. And I think that intuition isn't the ego mind. And what I mean by that is that intuition is this softness. It's a quiet whisper. And the ego mind tends to create worst case scenarios, to live in fear, to be ultra analytical, and to perpetuate the proponents of, I said this before, like worst case scenario, but it's more than that. It's taking something that doesn't exist and creating it in a reality, and then putting a stamp of, this is my belief system, on it, and then waiting for it to show up. And I think that that is a place where fear resides. And so I know this is a very trite example, but when someone says, and this was years ago, so I can tell you how long ago when I'm using the terms. I remember when someone said, well, I remembered that I had my curling iron on. And because I remember that, that's my intuition. Okay. I can see that, I think. But then that conversation followed with, I knew I forgot something. I was really scared. What if the house burned down? What if I blew a fuse? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't think that that's where intuition resides. And I think intuition is a feeling that sits in a place of stillness. And it is a sense. It is a feeling in a non-feeling way. It is a hunch that doesn't, in my world, it doesn't have a physical place, but sometimes it does. but it is a moment of thought or a wisp of information that passes through.
Would you call it a gut feeling as well?
Yes, it is a gut feeling, but does it reside in our gut?
I think it's more it's like two parts of that, whereas you're saying, and we can go into it more, of course, where do we find our intuition in our body? And of course, it's going to be different for different people, and different depending on what the information is, might reside in different places of our body. But in a general sense, do you find what we call in pop culture a gut feeling? Is that our modern day, maybe not super accurate, but the closest thing we might come to with a definition of intuition in the modern sense of that?
I mean, it can be, but I don't think people's gut feelings are necessarily their intuition. And let me rephrase that. It is the very basic. It's a pretty elementary. Somebody's got a gut feeling about something, but then here I would challenge that. What did you do with that information? Right?
Yeah.
Like what you may have had a hunch about something or a gut feeling, but where did you take that? Is it a passing moment of, oh yeah, I felt that, or yeah, I thought that before, but I didn't act on it? And I think that the more we, like anything, the more we focus on exercising that muscle of intuition, the more honed and an incredible navigation system that it actually can be. So on one hand, and by the way, I love maps. So no cutting down of actual wall maps or atlases or anything like that, because I love that. But if we were to take that, an actual map, and maybe the map is 20 years old or 50 years old, and then we take GPS the way we know it today, that's the way in which we can really exercise the level of intuition. It goes from a paper map to a sophisticated computer system that we get to navigate through. And so that's how I define what it's not and kind of what it is.
I love that, because it truly is like a roadmap for our reality. It's a beautiful way our intuition, which is complex because intuition molds into different emotions, and the emotions that we feel in some ways can be part of that GPS system guiding us to different places without them running our lives. And that's where the fine balance of listening to our feelings and our emotions, but not letting them take over, is obviously a lifelong journey in of that. But also it's hard. Part of the skill is, like you're saying, it's discerning what is an emotion that is also driving a belief system that's already within me versus a purely intuitive idea or thought that kind of comes in, and being able to discern the difference between the two. So I thought maybe a cool way to help the audience with that is, sharing a story of a time where we've used our intuition, maybe. And I'll just say really quickly, and I'll ask you the same question, Lisa. But for myself, like a great example of intuition was when I was living in Toronto, Canada, 3 or so years ago, and just one day in particular, I just was like, I can't live here anymore. I just know I'm not meant to live here anymore. And when I was asked, especially by family and friends, I never had a great answer other than I just know it's the right thing to do. I just know I have to go. It's this deep, deep, deep knowing that, in some ways logically I can't even explain. And I found things to help explain it, and obviously there was lots of logical reasons to move, but the true reason was it was a feeling beyond anything. It was a feeling of inner deep knowing that led me to pack up everything, put it in my car, and drive close to 4,000 kilometers west to where I live now. And that was a beautiful moment of intuition that I followed through on. And then here I am now, thanking myself for listening to that intuition. That's one of billions of examples. What would be one example that you would have, Lisa? Just because I find in story that can help people, I think, understand a bit more too what it is.
Yeah, that's a great story. I appreciate that. I've had a lot of moments like that, but the one that's coming to mind is actually when I didn't listen to my intuition. And like you, it was a very big business turning point in my life. And I was in the process of, speaking of Canada, building 3 technical training facilities, and one of them was doing well. And I had an opportunity to grow it to another 2 simultaneously, by the way, in Toronto and in Vancouver at the same time. Now, I don't know, do the math.
Wow.
It's a 5.5, 6-hour flight and a few time zones. I remember thinking to myself, do I do this? Now, here's where it's interesting. What is intuition? What is not? I realized that my ego wanted it. But there was something inside of me that said, are you sure? That's a stretch. You're already stretched. And this was not the only company I was running. And I decided to move past whatever feeling I was feeling and whatever thoughts were coming up, because I thought if I could just muscle through it, it'll be fine. I've always had a lot of success, so everything would be fine. And that particular story is very potent in my reservoir of memory because it was one that I should have listened, because what followed was a just an amalgamy of problems and issues, and ultimately the business didn't make it because there was too much pressure being put on something that didn't have quite the foundation that it needed. And so I learned very quickly about how do I hone the skills of my intuition even more so that I get out of my way and I listen to my higher self and I trust without any doubt that I know that even if it doesn't make sense, I'm still riding that path.
That's beautiful. I love we're taking opposite approaches to explain the same thing, because it's like, what is it not is just as important as what is it. And with intuition, it's so true. The more you listen to it, the more you want to continue to listen to it, because it's like getting the insider stock trading information before the rest of the world. It's getting those cheat codes to that video game. It's getting the test answers before you do the test. In a way, it's kind of like, once you really start to understand how spot on your intuition always is, you really start to recognize that it's the most logical thing to do is to actually listen to it, even and especially when the intuition and the information that's coming in really doesn't make any sense, or especially at the time feels like the opposite of what logically should happen. And the more I've listened to that voice, and it's my own voice, it's not for myself personally, and some other people might have different intuitive hits, and we'll get into this episode a little bit more specifically of like what different forms of intuition there are. We can call them the clairsenses in another form, and how everyone does perceive them a little differently. So that's another reminder for everyone, is to, it's your journey. This life is very much your own individual perception. So you will receive intuition in a slightly, if not maybe very different way than what we're describing. Doesn't mean it's not true, and doesn't mean it's not intuition. But with what you're describing, Lisa, I can think of now millions of more times in my life when I didn't listen to that intuition, and it was about as equally good of a teacher, because we learn well from the times that are if not better, actually, from the times that are extremely painful and challenging. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree. Those are moments where I will never forget. And we don't need to go on rinse and repeat there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you brought up something that's really amazing. I mean, yes, we are all able to hear intuition very differently because we're all on our own journey, and I love that. But I think what is the commonality or the common thread that we all have is that it is when we quiet the mind, when we release the breath and ungrip our mind and soften the breath and get into a quiet space. I think that is one of the best ways to begin practicing how to hone the skill, because it's a skill of learning how to tap into that intuition. And there is an undeniable trust. And like you said, it's not logical oftentimes, but what is logic, right? So when we are able to release that ego of, well, it should look a certain way, and actually perhaps our intuition is telling us to do something that we didn't already have in mind, but that trust is the way in which to really exercise the muscle of intuition.
And I'll say that, like, and I love that, Lisa. I'll say on top of that is belief actually comes before the proof is in the pudding. And so for me, one of my biggest hurdles to becoming more in touch with my intuition was I'm a very pragmatic, scientifically oriented, logically oriented person, certainly from my upbringing. And for me, I was like, I'll believe it when I can see it. And the irony with this pursuit is this is going to be one of those times where you're probably going to need to be more in a sense of trust, and I'll use the word faith as a non-religious word, just the actual basis of that word, which is that trust in the ineffable, trust in the non-material. And then when that trust is there before you have the physical manifestation of it, that's how the magic really starts to work with that area. And then once you get those times where you're like, wow, I listened to my intuition and look what happened. How grateful I am for this. Okay, now I'm going to really start to pay attention. And then it becomes a little easier each time, more and more, as you do see proof in the pudding. But when you're on your first bits of the journey, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage to even take that leap of faith in a sense, right?
I think that there's a lot of reason for that. I mean, we're not taught how to trust our intuition. We're taught how to trust the authority of media or of teachers or preachers or parents or peers or politics or religion. And we're not taught how to go in and find the answers. And yet the answers are all within us. And that's the beauty. It's not, we're not saying that, I guess what I'm not saying is that intuition is just these little simple moments that come in whiffs every once in a while. It actually is a way of life. And to go about the day or the moment or the hour or the year by being very intentional of listening to that higher self, that is your intuition. It is the ability to put the pause button on. It is the ability to say, I don't know, as you said earlier in your experience, I don't know what it is. I can't describe it, but I know this is where I should be, because here is not where I want. I don't feel that I'm supposed to live here. I need to go west. And imagine life where that's all we did. That's how we navigated life. And it's a magical place to be. But yet it is not easy at all. Because at the same time, we're navigating the rest of the collective, the expectations of others, the responsibilities that we have. And so I would say ever more important is the practice of mindfulness through meditation and breath work and contemplation moments, and finding your own viewer spiritual practice that works for you so that you can quiet that mind. Because intuition can't compete with our chatterbox. It doesn't work.
It's the noise, right? There's all this noise in our minds, and it's like, you're at a concert and you're with your friend beside you and it's just super loud, and you're screaming at your friend to try to tell them like, oh, I want to go get a hot dog, and your friend's like, what? It's what it's like in your mind when you don't take the time to quiet it down. It's like a busy freeway where it's just this like dull, loud roar of constant noise. So how on earth can you hear your intuition when you don't take any time to quiet things down? And the more you develop these habits, because they hopefully will become habits, the more you're able to hear that intuition on a daily basis, and then it becomes really practical. And I'm just thinking as you're speaking, Lisa, like practical, really basic things that I use my intuition for every day. Go to the grocery store, for example. Now, instead of like, I'll pick up an avocado and, you're kind of feeling which one's the right one, like the perfect one to grab. It's like that same approach I take now with shopping, but I'm using my intuition. And for me, it's like, because of the quiet time and practice I've taken over this, I can feel in my body these different answers, which thing of spinach should I grab? And it's like, I'm judging it less so now how it looks and more how it feels. Like I'm going by what the energy of the food that I need to get is, and what's my barometer for that? It's my intuition. 100%, it's my intuition. Or when I'm walking somewhere, I listen to my body. All of a sudden, my body's like, I really want to go left. Oh, you know what? Then I'm going to go left. Let's see what happens when I turn left. And you start to do these tiny incremental little things on a daily basis that involve listening to your intuition. Silly, but not so silly, little tiny things. And all of a sudden you have these much more magical days, because all of a sudden I listened to my body. I took that left-hand turn, and then all of a sudden I run into a friend of mine that's walking down that same street, and we have this beautiful conversation, and it turns into something I could never have predicted, and yada, yada, yada. And it goes from there. Or it might not even be as dramatic. It could literally just be that street had a house that reminded you of something that's really important to be reminded of in that moment. And it sends you into a thought loop that you wouldn't have gone down if you didn't take that left-hand turn. I mean, there's infinite reasons as to why all these things are happening.
Right.
So it's just,
no, I love it.
Right. It's the fun practice of what this can really look like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I mean, I think I really appreciate the simplicity of breaking it down into that. I have a story back in the mid 2000s. I was studying with a guy who invented matrix energetics. I can't believe I can't remember Richard's last name. Anyway, during one of the events that I was at, and I became actually a practitioner in matrix energetics back then, like in 2010, something like that. And it's a consciousness technology that is guaranteed that automatically shifts and heals every aspect of your life. So physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, intellectual. And so I learned all these just different techniques. And on one of the days in one of the workshops, they asked us to do an exercise when we took our break. And so it was dinner time, we took our break. And one of those things was, why don't you focus on what your body needs when you go out to eat? not what you think you should eat, not what you would normally go to because that is your safe house or that is what your mind is craving, but tap into your intuition and don't think about it, because that's the other thing. Intuition is pretty immediate. You don't have to say, what is that again? Are you sure about that? I'm not quite sure. Did I hear you right? No. Intuition is quick. And so back then I was exercising that muscle of intuition by my body actually needed to be fueled by. And I remember, I eat a lot of salads and stuff like that. And I remember I'm like, actually, I'm craving French fries. I'll never forget. I'm like, I never ate French fries, but I'm going to get some French fries. And there is a really interesting correlation that happens in the body intelligence when we actually listen to that. And we're not taught that anywhere, to be able to know what we need energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically with our nutrition. We don't know what we need. We're so used to having others tell us what we need by experts, and we actually are the expert and have dominion over our own self.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's probably, if not one of the most used forms of intuition for myself personally, especially over the last couple of years. There's so many different nutritional programs out there, and I have tried a lot of them and started to get into the new nutritional program called Listening to My Body and its own wisdom and what it decides it wants. And now I'm living purely with that as my way of eating, which is whatever the hell I want right now. Yeah. It's so interesting how it's like, I really need a big salad today. Give me a bunch of greens. All right, great. Let's do it. The next day it's like, I really want like a big hunk of meat, like some chicken specifically, maybe, and potatoes, something like really basic. Okay. And then the next day it's like, I want full vegan. I want to get a falafel today or something. So it really ranges, but that's all going back to this higher sense of knowing what we need in our bodies. We've been led to believe they don't know what's best for them. And these so-called experts do. These so-called experts also have a lot of ties to financial, institutions and organizations that will benefit from those particular ideologies. And so you got to wonder, where's the motivation for a lot of these nutritional plans coming from? And ultimately, the best plan you could ever really take is the one that your body is leading for you, because we are individual and our bodies are no different. Our bodies are all so specifically designed for our being to inhabit. So it's going to take a very particular type of diet. And the best way to listen is to listen to your intuition. And maybe that can lead us into like, what are these different types of intuitions? Because it's cool to get into this area of, okay, well, we understand that intuition now is this, like, it's a higher sense of knowing, and it's a deeper sense of knowing. It's definitely not really coming from our brain. Our brain is usually what is the computer system that will maybe take this information and do what it does and analyzes and all that stuff. But intuition is coming from a different place than our brain. But where does it reside in our body? And maybe what are the different types of intuition? Because we can get into these things called the clairsenses, and different people watching and listening to this podcast are going to definitely have some clairsenses that are more heightened than others. And I know this was really helpful for me in my journey. So do you want to go through that, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm all ears.
Great. So I've just pulled up a couple of definitions, and they're a little different depending on who's telling them, but there's some basics. So we've got claircognizance, which is basically just intuitive knowing. Claircognizance or claircognition is one of my major senses, which was that deep inner knowing that I felt when I wanted to, for example, move to Vancouver. That was claircognizance. There was nothing else going on other than just this pure knowing. So it's more cerebral. Let's say that one's more maybe in your mind. But I would argue it's also kind of throughout your whole body. But anyway, we're all gonna kind of identify it differently, but it's more of a form of intuitive knowledge. And one of the parts of this definition, so it includes precognition and retrocognition, which is knowledge of the future and knowledge of the past being maybe past lives, past memories that there's no way of your mind remembering, but your intuition does. That all comes with intuitive knowledge or claircognition. Then there's clairvoyance, which is a very popular one too. Clairvoyance is when you actually get visions of, again, things in the past, present, or future. And clairvoyance is really what will come when you think of something in your quote unquote mind's eye. And this is really where you get these visions. People can call them downloads as well, where you might have a full scene playing out in front of you, or it could be just a pure image. It can come in different forms, but it's going to come in a visual format. So that's the big difference, is that you're getting it in a visual format. Then we've got clairaudience, which is kind of the opposite of that. That's where you get messages through audio, through sound, or through inner hearing. So maybe it's obviously not somebody right beside you speaking into your ear, but it's a phrase, it's a word, it's something spoken in your own psyche, for example. So this is an audio form of clairsentience, which is clairaudience, intuitive audio, intuitive hearing. So that's what that might be. So again, if you get your intuitive things from a voice, might be your own voice in your mind, or it could be a different voice. Some people do hear guidance and wisdom in the form of other voices, and that sometimes can lead down the path of, people might think that that's a mental illness, and that's a whole other conversation in of itself. But it's something to also to consider. What are our mental illnesses? Are they just ways that we have yet to perceive our ways of being? I think schizophrenia is a big one, where people get diagnosed with that, when in reality, what are they actually hearing? Are these other dimensions, other frequencies that they're tapping into that we just don't understand, and therefore we'll label it a mental illness? That's a big topic. That's another thing we can discuss on another episode. But these are just fun questions I want to throw at everyone watching and listening to this, just to meditate on. Then there's clairsentience, which is this it's a true feeling. So it's a knowledge by feeling. There's a difference between maybe this knowledge of knowing and a knowledge of feeling. So what they're saying is, this is a person's ability to acquire knowledge by feeling. So a person who feels the vibration of other people, animals, or places is clairsentient. There are a lot of degrees of clairsentience, ranging from the perception of thoughts and emotions in others to their illness and injuries. This ability differs from clairvoyance because the knowledge comes only from feeling in the body. So I have friends who I'll be talking to, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, my left arm got really sore when you said this. Were you not able to receive something in this particular situation?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, it's interesting." And they're like, "Yeah, I felt that on my left arm because that's your feminine side, and yada yada yada." Like, but they're getting these intuitive hits from a specific feeling somewhere in their actual body. So that's an example of what that is, clairsentience. There's also clairsalience, which is actually an intuitive clairsentience, or a clairsent that comes from smell. So clairsalience, intuitive smell. This is less common, but it's a thing. Some people do get feelings purely from smell. For me, sometimes I get memory a lot with smell, and we know this through science, that memory and smell actually go back than any other form of memory. Memory and smell are the closest link to like the deepest types of memory, but you can go on beyond that into intuition with the intuitive smelling. So someone might smell a fragrance or an odor or a substance that leads them to gain information on anything, but it's coming in the form of a smell. So just be, cognizant of that. There's a whole bunch of others. I'm going to quickly just go through them right now. These might resonate with you, audience, maybe not, but I'm just going to go through them in case they do for some people. So there's also a thing called clairtangency, which is knowing by touch. I have a friend who a couple of people I know who can touch something, and then all of a sudden they just download all this information on an object or a place or anything, and they can just get all this information all of a sudden from touching something. Really, really, really cool to see. There's clair gustance, which is basically intuitive taste. So this isn't smell. Now this is taste. So again, something that is probably forming in your actual mouth with your taste buds, but it's an intuitive form of taste. Nothing to do with eating. It's going to be a taste that you feel in your mouth when some form of information is trying to come through. So again, pay attention to that. There's also clair empathy, which is intuitive feeling or emotion, which kind of just goes into being empathic. And that's just someone who can physically and emotionally feel other people's feelings, which I know a lot of people out there are definitely sensitive to that. I know myself, and I know you are, Lisa, as well. And then just a couple more, which is clair eloquence, which is intuitive communication. This is just I think this is kind of when people channel, let's say, information. And I know you do this all the time, Lisa, which is just forms of communication and thoughts that just come through clear as day. And you just kind of say it out. And then all of a sudden, after you said it, sometimes you're like, what did I just say? That might be a moment of clair eloquence, when communication is just coming through you completely and utterly intuitively. And then the last is intuitive embodiment or clairessence. And it's mostly what is being described as just embodiment of your intuition, which I would say probably goes back to maybe just claircognizance, clear knowing within your body of what you need to do. So some of these are harder to define than others. I just wanted to go through a quick list to provoke any thought for our audience here of what is your form of clairsentience and intuition, and let us know in the comments and the chat and everything. Well, the comments of this podcast, let us know what you might think or what you already know is your clairsense. So thanks for indulging me, Lisa.
Of course. No, this was very great information. My first sense, my intuition, is saying that many of us have multiple clair gifts.
Yeah.
And it's not just one. And then I'm going to go so far as to say, I think that we all have these gifts, but oftentimes they're hidden from our reality because either we don't believe that we possess this, or we don't stop very much to think about who we are or learn the process of contemplation and some of the other forms of stillness that will allow for certain things to come to us. But the other part that I thought of is, well, how about clair energetics? Because I think that a lot of information, especially now, is coming through from another dimension. And that information we can tap into by just walking into a path or on a path. And I mean this both figuratively and literally, that we could be walking into a portal of information and receive some kind of download. And what I mean by that is we can receive information that stimulates the senses. And the more we become a higher vibration of consciousness, the more sensitive we are to the exposure of that becoming or coming into our reality. And I know from my own personal journey that I absolutely, when I work with clients, when I do energy work, which I don't do very often, but when I do it, I do sense them. I do sense what's going on in their physical world, their mental, emotional world, but I don't have to feel it. And that's the difference. I used to feel it and I don't anymore, but I have a sense of what someone is going through. And I will say more times than not, they end up learning what that hole was within themselves. that they could not put any level of articulation. And so, but even going back to having conversations with, I mean, I'm surrounded by plants and I talk with them all the time. They tell me what they need. They tell me when it's time to water them. They tell me when it's time to get different light, to have a different exposure. It may be too hot. I get the same reaction with children, babies that can't talk, as well as plants and animals and nature. There is this connection that we have. We all have this connection. Last week we talked about that we are infinitely connected. Humanity, even though we may not like it because of some of the atrocities that are happening in our world, we are intimately connected like lattice, the matrix. And what I am doing will create a ripple effect, hopefully, to make an impact on not only directly, but indirectly out in the field of consciousness, out in the field of energetic, quantum field. And so I just wanted to say that I think that the more and more we gain consciousness, the more and more people will start feeling these clair gifts on even more levels than what you have described.
And you're absolutely right. They are, we have all of them and more.
I can't hear you, Chris.
Oh, hold on. Why not? Check 1, 2. Can you not hear me?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
So that was fun. A great example of energy and the cosmos kind of interrupting our podcast there with some fun quick little technical difficulties, but that's it's all in part to show us just how energetic everything is, right, in this reality. And you're reminding me of in my research into ancient history and looking at some of these brilliant civilizations that have existed, like the ancient Egyptians, for example. They talk about us having 360 senses, not 5, 360. And 360 is obviously an interesting number, of course, because it's the degrees of a circle or sphere, and our energy emits in a third-dimensional sphere toroidal shape, which is a circle. So it would make sense that we have this field of perception that could bring in many different forms of information, and which is just frequency. And you mentioned talking to plants. Well, we now know through science, which is just basically this wonderful method of explaining the non-physical and the things that we perceive, but science and spirituality continue to just kind of make sense of each other, really, more than anything. And now with some pretty cool scientific studies that have proven that plants, not only we know they communicate, but they communicate on a dialogue level like we communicate. It's just in a frequency range that we can't hear. So they've actually been able to record conversations with different plants and trees. And it's not just the information that trees, for example, send through their root system and then all the mycelium and the fungi, which is a whole other method of communication, which is like their own, internet, basically, that they have going on. But outside of that, they're actually sending audible signals that they can hear. We can't, because it's not in our 20 to 20,000 hertz spectrum that our ears can perceive. But a lot of other animals can perceive it, and a lot of plants obviously can perceive this, and they have a whole form of actual recorded and documented communication. So we're also just living in an existence that we're still relearning how to connect with and how to communicate with. And we're our own version of these toddlers and babies in a beautiful sense, not in a, insulting way, but we are navigating through life as toddlers right now, just learning how to reconnect and how to communicate with the universe, because, it's all around us, and there's infinite ways that we can connect to the animals and the plants and each other and the extraterrestrials and all these interdimensional beings. Like, it's all connected, and therefore we can connect and communicate with all of it. We just have to remember how.
Yes, I love that you said that. Matthias DeStefano, I saw on a recent podcast, and he was talking to Audrey Marcus. And they were talking about their ayahuasca journey together. And one of the things that Matthias said that was really profound is, as we are entering this a pretty amazing age of the unpredictability of AI, is parallel to the way our Mother Earth, our plants and animals, and the deep roots of Earth to us. We are just as foreign that it is not controlled. So humans are the AI to our environment, as AI is happening to us. And I just found that to be pretty phenomenal, to take that in and to really know what we have to do, right? I mean, to me, it just seems like, okay, well, that analogy is so profound. And we've had thousands of years to try to figure out how to commune with Mother Earth. And now we're at a stage where we're bringing in another level of AI to humans that we have no idea how to predict. As a matter of fact, it's more unpredictable than anything, which is another reason why honing in on our intuition can never be taken away through AI, ever. That's part of our being humanness. And when we can hone those skills, we cannot take away the human part of us, especially the spiritual audible that we're connected to on a electromagnetic frequency of a cosmic consciousness, of a Christ consciousness. I mean, we have a very important decision to make as humanity, as individuals. Are we going to allow our humanness to be taken? Or are we going to hone in the skills that are necessary for us to stay human? And I would say that intuition, which is a heart thread, is interconnected and just vital to our evolution and our sustainability.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of the most important parts of our humanity. The interesting, almost the irony right now of what's going on with AI and the technical boom that we've experienced over the last 100 years. Exponential growth, right? We've gone from horse and buggy, then to the printing press, and then all of a sudden cell phones within like a blink of an eye. And it's only getting even more incredible, which is great. That's not inherently a bad thing. But what's happened is we forgot about the high tech that we have and have had this whole time, which is our own bodies. These human bodies are actually quite extraordinary machines of extreme high technology, so high that we don't even recognize it. That it's so actually not beyond us, but forgotten, that we look outside of ourselves and create all this amazing technology, incredible stuff. Don't get me wrong. Internet, cell phones, rockets, whatever else, everything else we can throw in there. And what the ancients were really good at was looking at the technology within ourselves and developing that just as much as maybe the external technology, if not more so. They spent more time developing the inner technology. And maybe right now we're at a place where we have the invitation to go both ways. We've already got the external going, no problem. Lots of stuff, lots of innovation and development happening there. But if we can also take that time to balance things out and take that look within ourselves to develop the inner technology, which is intuition, which is what we call psychic abilities, which are all of these other ways of interacting with the fabrics of reality and our universe in a much more conscious and intentional way, where all of a sudden we can emerge and start to live like what we would consider superheroes to be living by, with all these amazing abilities and ways that they can manipulate matter in the universe. Well, we're built with those same abilities. We've just forgotten them, or that they're just offline. You look at these things, just like our 3% of our DNA is being utilized. Well, our DNA is our programming. It's like operating your cell phone and never downloading an app for it. It's like having a computer and only using it as a flashlight or something. It's like there's so much more that we could be tapping into, that we can't even imagine what our world would look like if we were actually tapping into the 97% of what has still yet to be realized. And you wouldn't recognize the world if that's the world we all of a sudden started living in. And that's the potential that we have, of course, is that we can move into a world where we are tapped into our intuition. We are all connected, and we're probably all communicating telepathically, and all of a sudden coming into such a deeper understanding of who we all are and our place together and in community and connection. And then boom, the world's unrecognizable. And it's these quantum leaps are, of course, 1,000% possible. And that's where I see us going, is emergence with both. It's the technology of the outer world, which we can call AI and all the other things. And then there's our inner technology, which is, intuition and psychic abilities and all that good stuff. So I see emergence of both.
I do too. And it reminded me of something else that I wanted to share with you when you were talking about our ability to hear and our senses. One of my dreams is to be able to bring about a way in which we can measure how, through human connection with our Mother Earth, that humans can actually, through thought and love, can heal. And I'm sure that there are some things that have been experimented and researched on, that some of the things that are happening on our planet, that can we bring together groups of people in higher vibration and actually go through a forest and heal that forest quicker. I have no doubt that that's possible, but I think so much of the human capacity has not at all been tapped. And the great late Ken Carey said in one of his greatest books called, not the Starseed Transmission, but the Starseed Transmission, is that we live in a world far greater, far more complex, far more beautiful than the one superimposed by a species who's yet to catch up with its capability. And that would be humans. And I think that we haven't even come close to tapping into the potentiality that exists within humans. I mean, I've been saying this for years, Chris, and I think you know this, is that even before they started to talk about 12 strands of DNA, again, information that's coming through to me years ago, I'm like, we have 12 strands of DNA, or if not more, but we can't see it. Therefore, humans think, science thinks, we don't have any more than 2. And we just don't have the capacity to see it. Our vision hasn't been expanded to be able to see those things yet, right?
Yet, right?
Yeah.
That's where we're going. And not to bring it back down to an everyday level where sometimes I can get into a little despair of like, oh my God, we have so much longer. There's so much more to go for our species. But then that's also the beauty of it, is that there is so much room for us to grow, and that's part of the hope, is that there's actually, when people are like, oh, like what can we possibly do? We're hopeless as a species. It's all going down the tube. It's like, well, it's actually the opposite. We've in a way, we've set the bar so low that we have so much more we can rise to, and we can grow to, and we can learn from. And we can expand to. And that's the fun part of all this is, you know, bringing it back to an everyday level where it's like, okay, well, how can I start? I can start learning how to listen to my intuition. I can start by just learning that just the awareness of knowing that we have more capacity is already a beautiful stage in that journey. You know, just the awareness that we can listen to other dimensional knowledge that comes through us instantly of how to navigate this 3D reality. Just learning how to listen to that and finding the parts in our bodies or the aspects of our being that can tune into that the best, and then moving from there and just using it to go grocery shopping, using it to interact with your loved ones, using it at work, using it at your favorite passion project, your hobbies, whatever it is. You know, you can just start to implement this in every waking part of your life and see how it goes.
Yeah, I totally agree, Chris. I mean, I think what is required is the willingness to put your attention on your intention, to say, okay, I'm going to try this on. I'm going to take a 30-day challenge, which would actually be really cool for us to do for our viewers. A 30-day challenge, a 60-day challenge. I want to see if I can hone in on my intuition. And we're going to leave it somewhere in the comments, and just different things that you can do to practice the intuition. And but I think it starts with intention. You have to want to do it. You cannot be the someone who says that they want to do something but don't take the action to do it. Right? I think it was last week what the 5 stages of manifestation are: thoughts, feelings, actions, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, actions, and manifestation. I don't know. Sometimes I make this up based on how it sounds to me, but that works for me, right? Those are my stages of manifestation, but action is a huge piece of it. We can intellectualize all day long on the way we want ourselves to be and the way we want our world to look. But until we put the piece of action into place, nothing happens. We just ruminate. And so, you know, viewer, I really challenge you. I mean, start small, like Chris said. You know, have a conversation with yourself around what your body is telling you that you would like to have for dinner tonight, or you know, sit on maybe a challenge that you're going through in your life. Maybe it's a career challenge, and you're not sure what to do. I mean, this is the key when, you know, we sit and we ponder about the problems that we have in our lives, but there's always an answer. And I think that when we get to press into that muscle and say, yes, I know what everyone wants over on this side, or what makes sense, or what's logical, but what do I want? What feels good to me? What is it that brings me joy and happiness? That could look very, very different. Albeit it being possibly very scary and uncomfortable. Right? Chris, do you have any other, I mean, we've got so many different examples or tools and techniques that we can give you to help you just take these baby steps, because this is what it is. You can't learn mathematics in a day. No.
Well, unless, you know, you get a divine download all of a sudden, wake up with savant's syndrome. Basically, you're absolutely right, Lisa, and at the same time, anything is possible. So I'm like, I never want to rule out massive quantum leaps, because that's always possible too. But you're absolutely right. I think the most important thing is to also just kind of like let yourself off the hook with this whole process, because you're absolutely right. It's foreign, and we have a lot of programming working against us here, so it's not very likely going to be an overnight thing that you're just going to understand. And even if it is, there's always new levels and layers to uncover with this. So it's a lifelong journey, and that's the beauty of it, and that's the fun of it. But I would say one of the most important things is I remember on my journey, I used to really give myself a hard time because I had all these friends who were a lot more, well, in touch with their intuition and could really use it in a very tangible, clear, obvious way. could interact with these higher dimensions in a very tangible way. And I'm like, it's like I wasn't invited to that radio station. Like I can't seem to dial into that like frequency. How is that happening? I'm so frustrated. And I realized that I was just getting the information in a different way. That's all it really was. And I had to learn that my form of receiving these downloads or these points of information was just different. And it was going to look and feel and sound different than how my friends were all receiving the same kind of thing. So be kind to yourself and just know that it's going to look and feel a little bit different for everybody. But of course, the commonalities that we all get is a sense of clarity and a sense of true knowing of what we're needing and also where we're going in our life in general, or in a very small microcosm where I feel like this is the right thing I got to eat for dinner tonight, so I'm going to go for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It can be so basic.
I think that it can be. I think typically when we're learning at the very basic level of trusting our intuition, again, it goes back to trust. Right? Trust and intuition go hand in hand. They cannot coexist without each other.
And it's like trusting yourself ultimately.
It is a trust. It's a trust of self, but it is a trust that the information that you're receiving, regardless of where you're receiving it, is the information that's needed. And it could be very subtle. As a matter of fact, at the beginning, it is very subtle, which is why it's difficult to hear it, to sense it, to feel it. Hence why some level of spiritual practice or quieting the mind, ungripping the mind and softening the breath and, just getting in a place of stillness is a wonderful practice to be able to hear those subtleties. And as you start moving into and trusting that you're seeing some results based on the experiences that you're having, sometimes your intuition is just this loud, roaring boom. I mean, there is no, you know this, right? Let's take a relationship with someone. Have you ever fell in love? Raise your hand.
Yep.
And have you ever been in a place in your life, and maybe people have fallen in love multiple times. I don't think that there necessarily is just one person. But there may have been a moment or several, and you just knew. You just know, like, there's something here. I can't describe it. That's your intuition, right? And the less we judge the choices that we're making based on what we think is intuition, the results of those things, because sometimes we trust our intuition and it takes us down a different rabbit hole, but that rabbit hole ultimately ends up being something that is in our best, for our best purpose and for our highest alignment. But to be kind and gentle and non-judging, because trusting our intuition, as I know from my own personal journey, has led me to places that I never dreamed I would be at. And some of those places have also created its own mini I want to say mini heartbreaks for me. But I look back on it and I can say, man, I can't believe what I just learned. And I am so grateful that I had that experience, because if I didn't have it, trusting my intuition to go here, 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 this is the direction, this is the pathway it took me, I would not in a million years be where I'm at today, who I am today, who I've become today. So go easy. And as we always say, have fun, be light. This doesn't have to be a, reading a thick textbook, right? Where you're going to get tested at the end of every chapter. And if you fail, there is nothing that this could be a playful exercise. And, the next time you go maybe to a restaurant, and, I love the Greek restaurants that have like 10 pages to food, because I always want to look at every page and literally just scroll down, like, what is it that I really need now? And see how that turns out for you. You will experience light bulb moments, I think, right, Chris? I mean, I think you've had those over and over and over again through your travel.
Exactly. 100%. It's fun. It's really, these are the fun ways that you can navigate and learn about your intuition. And I learn the most and the best through fun as well. I mean, that's why we really want to emphasize this playfulness here and being able to laugh and bring like elements of comedy into this, because one, it's just more fun. And two, it's a beautiful way to navigate life, and I think it's a more natural way to navigate things, is to not take this game so seriously. It's a game. You don't work a game, you play a game. The game of life is something that we play, and decide whether it's deciding what to eat, which is fun, or ways that you can tap into your intuition. One of my favorite ways is to every week book off one day where it's my nature day. I have a nature day, and that usually involves going with maybe a friend of mine or a couple of friends of mine down to the water, to the ocean, and doing like an hour of breath work, and then some meditation, polar dips, cold dips, and just great conversation mixed in all around that. Almost every single time, laughter, like tons of silliness, goofiness, laughter. And at the end of those days, not only do I feel recharged and rejuvenated to a beautiful degree, but I have so much space, and I always get like down. It's funny, like you clear out more space, and then all of a sudden it's just like, like all these thoughts just like start flying in from somewhere else. And it's really fun to experience that, and you usually get great insights, and I look forward to that. I don't expect it, or I do expect it, actually. I also know that I'm not trying to create the thoughts that are coming in. I just clear the space and enjoy seeing what falls in. I clear that space, and I'm like, all right, cool. What do we get? What do we got today? And just lean into that playfulness and that fun energy. So we invite you to try that yourself, and let us know. Let us know what you come up with. Let us know what you struggle with. Let us know the downloads and all the things that kind of come up with this. And if you're watching this on YouTube, let us know in the comments below. If you're listening to this somewhere else, like Spotify or something, you'll find our emails and contact information in the show notes. Like reach out to us. Let us know how these practices go for you, because it's great, and it's a really wonderful opportunity to connect with other people. And maybe on that note, Lisa, you can tell the audience about some of the things we got going on at Wisdom from the Edge, that people can deepen this connection, with more tools, but not just that, but people that they can connect with that are also on this journey, which I think is really, really important, to be able to connect with people like that. So how are you doing, Lisa, on your end there?
Sorry.
Are we in some cosmic technical
we're in a cosmic technical something going on here.
Good sign. I like it.
No, I thanks. I mean, absolutely. So many different ways to tap into learning more about this journey, as well as other tools and techniques, given that we've got just several different programs that you viewer can sign up for. We've got every Thursday, first Thursday of the month, we're doing a 90-minute Zoom on the building blocks of meditation. It is very interactive, and you can look that on our website at wisdomfromtheedge.org. We've got programs for teachers and for students. We have a Happy Teachers program that's fantastic, that is all around the building blocks, really, of mindfulness and different practices that can help teachers with burnout and internal stress and external stress and demand. And then we also have the self-mastery program that Chris and I are involved in. I've architected a 3-year program back in 2018. And It's one of the best, I think, ways in which to really, really tap into the essence of who we are and where we're going individually and collectively. It's a beautiful compilation of small cohorts that are from all over the world, individuals that come together and stay together as a small group over a year, and multiple times that these groups actually get them matriculate to year 2 and year 3. And so Chris and I are working together, and we're putting cohorts together all the time. So this is a fantastic and a wonderful opportunity to dive deeper. We also are building a community on Mighty Networks. And Chris, if you want to talk about that a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah. So again, it's just about deepening the connection. One of my favorite parts of the self-mastery program is the community that you build through that. And I have, if you're trying to say something, Lisa, I can't hear you, FYI. Okay, sorry. So yeah, with the self-mastery program, it's not only beautiful because of the knowledge that gets distilled in these programs, but it's the people, it's the container. So what we wanted to do with the Mighty Networks platform is kind of take that idea and build an even larger community where everything that kind of comes through these different programs and all the people can have a place where they can congregate and connect and share information, and also a place that we can, as a part of Wisdom from the Edge, where we can also be posting more exclusive content, opportunities for webinars that we can all jump in on these calls together and get a big group together where we can brainstorm and we can share and we can digest all the plethora of all these topics. So it's basically a one space where we can not only share all this information, but we can also connect with each other. Mighty Networks is a really cool platform because you can also privately message anyone else that's in this platform. So once again, if you meet someone on one of these calls and you got like 30 seconds to say something and you got such a great vibe from that person, you want to further that connection, you can do so on the Mighty Networks by just privately messaging. You can create little group chats among your peers as well. It's a beautiful connection tool, ultimately, I find, but also it's going to be and is a great resource for information. So a lot of stuff that might not go on the website per se is going to be on the Mighty Networks. And outside of all those things that you can certainly pay and put your financial energy towards, there's also free stuff. And the free stuff is all going to be on the YouTube channel and the website. And if you just want to dip your toes first before diving into all the amazing resources we have, you can dip your toes into the YouTube channel and our podcast and just listen to more episodes, watch more episodes. It's available to watch on YouTube. And I think eventually we'll be getting over to Rumble as well. And so available to watch and consume if you want to watch us, or if you want to listen to us. We're on every platform. So that's the free way to also just get started on this journey with us. So there's not millions, but there's lots of different ways to interact with us here at Wisdom from the Edge. So we'd love to hear from you sometime.
Thank you. And also, we are really, really grateful for you, listener, for really supporting us. And you support us energetically, and you support us in your comments. So we really appreciate that. And Wisdom from the Edge is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 educational nonprofit. We are committed to making an impact in the world. We are committed to making an impact with students and teachers and individuals like you, with first responders and different communities. We need each other. And so on our website, we do have a place where if you would like to be a member, you can be on a monthly subscription and receive some freebie stuff and some other exclusive interviews that, that we will be doing with other guests, as well as other things and, other programs that Chris and I are working on.
Yeah, lots more of those programs to come. And this is just the beginning. And there's already a lot to offer here, but there's just going to be so much more as time goes on from all the amazing people that we're bringing into the organization and collaborations and all that. So it's an ongoing thing. That's why it's great to contribute if you can, and sign up for these groups or for these communities, or at the very least, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow the podcast on wherever you're listening it to. Give us a nice little rating, a comment, all that stuff goes a long, long way. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Chris, thank you for your wisdom today. I'm super grateful for everything that you contribute on a weekly basis. Thank you so much, listener. We're super grateful for you to just listen. And like Chris said, if you could just give a little like, we would be grateful. And we will continue to provide you with some juicy, conscious conversations that we're having on a weekly basis, which feels really, really good to both of us. That we just have the freedom to talk about things that I know that we're interested in, and I know that you have an interest as well. So thank you again.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you too.
Okay.
Thanks for everything. Thank you for watching and listening, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode of Wisdom from the Edge. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Wisdom from the Edge. I'm your co-host, Chris Noble, and on behalf of Lisa Brazelton and myself, we just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, checking out the episode today, and being a part of this unfolding as we are here to essentially stimulate conversation and expand consciousness through love and through information. And so in doing so, if you want to support our channel, please like and subscribe. Be sure to message us if you have any questions or things that you'd like for us to cover on the show. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, just stay curious and stay kind and connected to one another on this beautiful planet and this beautiful galaxy. So from us to you, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the next episode of Wisdom from the Edge.